The Full Melt Show is intended for a mature audience. It contains adult themes, adult content, and sometimes adult language. Listener discretion is advised.
Full Melt.
This doesn't look like tomatoes here.
These are cannabis plants. We have a medicinal collective. We grow 30 some odd different strains.
What's the name of this one?
We call it a Blue O King or a Blue Ogre King, but it's a Blue Dream by Ogre Kush by Royal Kush. So, and you know,
that one's simple too.
Yeah, you can see the hairs there. Those signify the female characteristics.
So that right there is what eventually will be the difference between this and a fern you see in a hotel lobby.
Bingo.
There you go, bud.
Casey O'Neill and his brother Nathaniel are third-generation cannabis growers in the famed Emerald Triangle of Northern California.
As children of the community, we've known the good things that cannabis has provided, and we've also seen the bad things that have come from a lack of regulation. People who are unscrupulous or don't care about the environment and the land and the reality that's here blow it up and go nuts.
We kind of refer to them as resource extractors. You know, they come here and suck everything dry.
With 53,000 cannabis farms in the area, it may be America's single largest source of marijuana, but it's also a growing threat to the environment. Regulators recently estimated that the size of cannabis farms has doubled since 2009. That's depleted streams, destroyed habitat, and posed a lethal risk to fish and wildlife.
I'm standing here in Ryan Creek, which is part of the Eel River watershed. Never a roaring river here, but it's usually big enough to accommodate the coho salmon. Creeks like this have been siphoned off to feed marijuana farms all over this area, and as the market for marijuana gets bigger, the creeks get smaller and smaller.
That's amazing. That's some really low flow. This is the kind of stream flow that we normally see late in the summer, and you're looking at early May.
Scott Bauer is a scientist with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife and the lead author of a report that found marijuana plants in the area are decimating local watersheds. In the last 2 growing seasons alone, at least 30 streams have gone completely dry.
Growers themselves don't understand. They may think, I'm only taking a gallon of water per minute, but the cumulative effects of that, when you have 100 of those across the landscape, then the streams go dry.
The industry knows it has a problem, and that's why the O'Neill brothers offered us a tour of their farm. It's a model of sustainability in an industry that suddenly needs one.
So those are our solar panels. Our whole farm is powered by solar energy.
Before the drought, the O'Neill brothers invested their life savings in 2 artificial ponds, which now hold about 2 million gallons of captured rainwater. They named the larger pond after their grandfather, who founded the farm in the 1980s.
He was always a gardener. He always loved to grow things.
He'd say, if I could only have enough water.
That was just
only had enough water.
It was always, never have enough water.
Yeah, you got a lot, man. You got to set up a slip and slide down this big hill.
That's right here. That's the plan for the summer. That's
great.
So from here, we have the solar pump. Up there we have, right now, 20,000 gallons in storage. And so we just gravity feed down from the top.
You got ahead of it, but you know there are tens of thousands of farmers out in this area, and maybe they didn't. What do you think's going to happen to them?
They're going to need to store more water. And with a concerted government effort, a small farm tank program, a water storage program, every cannabis plant grown in California could be grown on stored water.
But diversion isn't the only problem tied to marijuana farms. Displaced dirt, spilled diesel fuel, and fertilizer also end up in the water.
There are egregious crimes against nature being committed, and there are farmers who need to learn the regulations and comply with the regulations. And those are 2 very different things within the industry.
Hezekiah Allen is executive director of the Emerald Growers Association, a trade group working to remake the industry in the image of sustainable operations, like Happy Day Farms.
What we really try to stress is transition. A lot of the farmers are moving to storage, but more farmers need to move to storing more water quicker.
Many say the quickest way to clean up the trade may be to legalize it for all users. That would coax farmers into the open, where they can trade best practices and allow regulators to easily find those who don't adopt them.
Unregulated commercial agriculture is bound to have more significant impacts than regulated agriculture. The simple solution is that 18 years after California has a legal medical cannabis industry, it's time for the state to regulate that industry.
The common thing we hear, though, is, well, I'm afraid. And this is what we hear every single day. We're afraid of being regulated.
The drug war has been intense in the Emerald Triangle. Many farmers have experienced military-style federal raids.
They landed the chopper in the meadow down there. They came up towards the house, so Ma took me and Ben and ran down into the gully back here and went up the road, circled down to Grandma's. They smashed up the house pretty good.
So this is a pregnant woman with a 3-year-old.
And a 1.5-year-old.
Yeah. Wow.
Now, ahead of a possible vote next year on the use of recreational marijuana, the industry and regulators are working on a new relationship for a new era.
It's going to take time for us to rebuild the trust and to really build the partnerships we need to enforce and ensure 100% compliance with these regulations.
We want people to come in the front door to call us and say, hey, I want to get straight. We go visit sites of people that are willing and tell them, here's how these things should be done. And our most recent activities, we're getting close to 100% compliance.
In the meantime, another growing season has begun. And unless a model like that of Happy Day Farms can take over the industry, environmental damage is likely to grow as well.
Are you seeing a change in the farmers around here? Are they doing what you were doing?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We expect to establish our system of control here and make sure that it is a triple bottom line perspective, that it honors community, ecology, and economy on equal footings.
Do you think this system can scale to any other farm in the region, any other farm in the state?
I think this is eminently extrapolatable. We've set up in difficult country because this is the land we had to farm. This is not farming territory. This is a steep hill with rock and clay soil. People who have ground that's good to farm on won't have to work as hard as we have.
Oh, look at that, dude. Agile, bud.
I've read that cannabis plants in this area use as much water as all of San Francisco plus 50%.
So we're going to talk retail units. A pound of beef, they say 1,500 gallons of water. A bottle of wine, 500 gallons of water. An eighth of cannabis, 2 gallons of water. So in terms of value for productivity, cannabis is an excellent use of water. That said, it needs to be done in a manner that doesn't denigrate the environment and take water away from the fish. So we can be fish-friendly and still produce this incredible economic bounty that comes from the sun through human labor. We harvest, it's the translation of solar dollars into real dollars, and that's something that we're very honored to participate in.
Are you high? What are you talking about?
This is the Full Melt.
Give me a break.
The Full Melt Show. A marijuana discussion about news, culture, politics, and lifestyle. FullMelt.com. Toll free. 844-420-TALK. 844-420-TALK.
Let it be known that you're not growing cannabis unless you have an adequate, clean supply of water. Is this rocket science? You're also not growing food. You're not sustaining life on Earth unless you have a clean supply of water. Look, you don't need cannabis on the Earth to exist. You need food on the Earth to exist. You need water in order to create the food on the Earth to exist. You need water outside of that food to exist. I mean, your body is mostly water, isn't it? And so water is a precious resource. One that now seems to be tipping the balance scales with the price of, fossil fuels. How much is a gallon of gas now? Go price a gallon of water. Here in the States where water's a little more abundant, save California and maybe parts of Texas, the Southwest, the desert Southwest generally. You get into Michigan, and we have what is it? I don't know, it's some huge percentage. I have to look it up now because I forgot it. I used to know it off the top of my head. It might have changed a little bit. We have this huge percentage of the world's fresh water supply locked up here in the Great Lakes, right wrapped around the studio. Big peninsula known as the Mitten, Michigan. We've put tremendous steps in this state to protect that water supply for obvious reasons. Not only this state, but there's, all the other bordering states that have shoreline along the Great Lakes. They want to protect that water too, don't they? I mean, it's a huge economic draw, but not for its freshwater value, really for its recreational value, for its fishing value, for its, there's scuba divers that love to come to Michigan and scuba Michigan, right? Precious water. Elegant, sparkling, clean, precious water. It's something that everybody needs. Oil we can do without. We don't have to have oil. We have alternatives to fuel. There exist. If oil dried up tomorrow, it would suck. But we would move along. We would still have energy. We would have to switch some things. We'd have to do some major changing around, but we would survive as a species. We would not cease to exist. If water did the same thing, we'd be goners. I mean, goners in no time. And if it dried up slowly, leaving these big puddles known as the Great Lakes behind, don't you think that you would need every military force suspended from current duty and surrounding those properties to protect that supply? Because you think you think there's strife in other lands. Try protecting the water that keeps the human race alive, all that's left. I'm just proposing, I suppose, an exaggerated example. But it does tell the truth, doesn't it? I mean, it takes the complexity of life's veil as you see it in everyday working life. It pulls it down and it exposes you to the background. What's going on behind that veil? What's going on behind the busyness of the day? Well, water's being used, it's being abused, it's being drained away. In California, they have this huge drought. And it's finally being relieved a little bit, to some extent, very minimally, though. I think less than what it seems to be by that, hurricane out in the Pacific, spilling some water, just kind of throwing some moisture up in that direction and letting it fall to the ground. I mean, bridges collapsed, brand new ones, nice ones that just passed inspection, collapsing from the floodwaters. It doesn't help because a lot of that fresh water doesn't have a chance to soak into the land. And if it did, it would cause a lot of mudslides because of the deforestation that's happened from the fires. I mean, it's a problem. And the water doesn't sink in and end up replenishing the aquifer from which you drink. And so the Colorado River's diverted. I mean, a lot of water's diverted to get to California to supply not only the huge agricultural industry there, but the food, there's a lot of food, there's a lot of animals, there's a lot of people that need that water. And amongst them, in this group of people taking water, are the people growing cannabis. Remember, they started this back in 96 for the most part. Hey, we can form collectives and grow marijuana. We can do it outside. The great water debate about marijuana growing. Is it contributing to the drought? Is it causing other environmental problems? We get the lowdown from Cris Carrigan with the California State Water Board after the commercial break coming up next.
You're getting the full melt.
Got something to hide? Canalock offers discreet and effective storage solutions that destroy odor, so nobody knows. Canalock is a patented charcoal-activated bag that discreetly stores your marijuana. Canalock is made from the same material as military chemical warfare suits. Get yours at canalock.com. Visit canalock.com to learn more about no-smell technology.
Hey, it's Steve Green for the Sweet Leaf in Flint, because now getting safe access to medical cannabis patients in Flint, Michigan is never more welcoming. Presenting the Sweet Leaf, a brand new patient experience bringing 12 carefully selected caregivers housed in 9 separate offices to distinctly assist you with their knowledge and reputation for excellent patient care. Classes and training coming soon in the large community room. Check it out in person, 400 South Door Highway, or call 810-259-2571. The Sweet Leaf Center in Flint, 810-259-2571. 571.
Get growing with GrowMax. Indoor, outdoor, beginner, or a warehouse full of Gavitas. Probiotic organics, or huge production with Max Power Monster Aeroponics systems. We can help you rock it. YouTube GrowMax with 2 X's. Customer service is why we're blowing up. And I'm Dave. My cell number is 906-221-2111. We also specialize in electrical and HVAC and new double-ended bulb technology. 906-221-2111. Get growing. GrowMax.
Get the beach bong ready for sunshine and sandy beaches in Negril, Jamaica this November as the High Times Cannabis Cup moves from Amsterdam to the Caribbean. Your trip starts with the absolute best rates on airfare, hotel, events, and all your Cannabis Cup travel needs at travelcannabiscup.com. Come stay with us, relax in the sun, play in the sand, and smoke down with the cool people, man. Get to the High Times Jamaica Cannabis Cup. Best travel prices right now at travelcannabiscup.com.
My Compassion's Cannabis Conference and Exposition will be held July 23rd to 25th. The nation's premier cannabis health and wellness event will feature stimulating and comprehensive presentations that are up to the minute on cannabis science, human health, legislation, and business growth, all designed to attract the largest gathering of patients, healthcare professionals, lawyers, and service providers found anywhere. Specialists from around the country will give live presentations on cannabis. For tickets and information, visit mycompassioncanacon.com.
It's the Full Melt Radio Show. So we're coming to you live from the petpain.com studios as we do every Monday through Friday from 7 until 8 p.m. here on thefullmelt.com. Really easy to subscribe to us on iTunes. Go to thefullmelt.com right there and click the iTunes link. Incidentally, broadcasting tomorrow night as a program note from, obviously you just heard this, from the Navy Pier in Chicago at the CannaCon Conference. That is being put on by My Compassion, a national nonprofit trying to educate people about that subject. I look forward to talking to you from the Navy Pier tomorrow and Friday. We'll be back here in studio on Monday. Water. Water is the order of the day, isn't it? And even a bigger order of the day when you're talking about someplace like California experiencing a record drought. And so people start to get a little more squeamish about water and its use and possible abuse when the water supply dries up. I mean, recently in the news, you got Tom Selleck hoarding water in tanker trucks trying to water his lawn illegally because you're not supposed to do that right now. We can do without the lawns. We need the food, right? California's economy represents 1/5 of the nation's GDP. A lot of our GDP is agricultural and exported. And there's a lot of water supply that's needed to supply that chain. And in the interest of the overall conversation, as California has been a medical marijuana growing state since '96, this has become an even more important topic as the water dries up in California. And so there's some enforcement mechanisms going on there. And I'm not talking about enforcement of marijuana fields. I'm talking about the enforcement of water laws. And so in the interest of talking about that, we bring to the table Mr. Cris Carrigan from the California State Water Board. Welcome to the program, Cris. Oops, are you there? Oops, stand by. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, I didn't have the right button. Sorry. So listen, I wanted to ask you first. Are people surprised? Because I know you're in the business of enforcing water, right?
Sure. We enforce water quality and water supply laws and regulations.
Okay. And so how I guess what I want to ask primarily first is, when did marijuana become an issue for the Water Board?
Well, it's been an issue in the North State for many years. Probably about the last 10 years we've been doing enforcement actions relating to water quality issues from the discharge of sediments and pesticides. But really it's been the last 3 or 4 years with the onset of the drought and then also the rapid proliferation of gardens in the North State that have made water supply an acute issue.
So as the grows got bigger and more prolific, I suspect that most recently that's gotten really abundant, hasn't it? Hasn't this exploded in the recent past more than it has in the past, say, 15 years?
Yeah, it has. But, yeah, I think you have to keep some context here, too. The water shortages caused by cannabis cultivators are primarily location-specific in the pristine, remote streams of northern California, or some of the mountainous areas, too.
So you're talking about the area known as the Emerald Triangle.
That's one of the areas, but also in the Central Coast area of California, there's a lot of cultivation there, as well as now in the Central Valley. And also timing-specific, because a cannabis crop, needs to be watered in the summer and early fall, into late fall, actually, when rainfall is always at its lowest in California.
Now, it's not just the supply of water that's the issue, and we'll delve into that, I hope, a little bit deeper in a moment. But I wanted to give an overview at first. There's also the contamination of water. Isn't that an issue?
Yes, it is. In fact, we're developing a permit now that will address both water quality and water supply issues so that we can provide sort of a pathway to compliance for cannabis cultivators.
Now, you brought up the third issue that I wanted to bring up, which was this issue of regulation. It's been slow to come because of the issue of cannabis itself being a controversial one, yes?
Yeah, its status as being illegal under federal law has caused a lot of regulators, I think, to take pause before wading into the topic. But the problems have become so acute in our state, we have no choice now but to wade in and try to use our regular regulatory tools to address the problems that have arisen from the rapid proliferation of cultivation. So we're kind of between a rock and a hard place. There's really nothing else we can do. As a civil enforcement authority, we don't eradicate plants, we don't do that kind of thing, but we can regulate the discharge of wastes to waters, and we can regulate the diversion of waters from streams, and that's what we're going to do.
I think it should be done. I think especially in your situation, it's the only responsible answer, isn't it, Chris?
It sure is, yeah.
I think a lot of the people in the cannabis community, would you be able to tell me, agree with you?
Yeah, we have broad support for our regulatory approach. There is a major enforcement component to it. We want to push people that can comply into our permit scheme, and then there are always going to be those that can't, and we need to push them into the law enforcement model. But there's broad acceptance in the cultivation community, especially those that have a sense of land stewardship, which many do, of acceptance to this type of approach.
Are there places in California that this is a less sensitive topic?
Yes, it varies dramatically from county to county.
Really?
Yes. I mean, I think there are still, California is a very split state in terms of political bents or shades, and in many areas there's still the thought that this is a law enforcement matter. If you have even 6 plants on your property, that you should be arrested and that your plant should be eradicated. Other counties take a much different view, and they embrace the culture and the need for medicinal cannabis, which is accounted for under state law. So it really varies from county to county and really community to community how much acceptance there is for cultivators.
Now, cultivators, there are going to be various shades of those as well. Ones that are compliant, like you said. Ones that will never be compliant because they're really just part of the illegal scheme. They never really planned on being part of the legal scheme, I would imagine. There are the ones that are growing. Are there people growing in forested areas there that are protected national forests, and that causes an issue as well?
Well, sure. Those people have to be weeded out, so to speak. They cannot remain part of our community. But all those kinds of what we call trespass grows need to be eradicated.
Right. I would assume that as a law enforcement, a civil law enforcement mechanism within the state government, you're not really interested in taking it to the law that does the criminal enforcement, unless that's the only place you can go to get compliance, right?
Well, we leave that to the criminal authorities, yeah, and we'll refer matters to them. We do have some criminal authority for intentional water pollution, which is a difficult case to make. But to do a civil prosecution, the standard of proof is preponderance of the evidence instead of beyond a reasonable doubt. And really, we just want to get people into compliance. So many of the people that we have engaged with, we've done 100 inspections at gardens this year. Out of my office. Many of the people we've engaged with, we provide them with a checklist. They're on their way to compliance already. Others have engaged in recreational bulldozing and show no complete disregard for the environment. And we'll be seeking fines and penalties against those types of parties.
Now, this is a cost negative thing for California, isn't it? This enforcement thing. It's got to be big, and I imagine it's got to be dangerous at times because of the criminal element. If you're creeping up on a garden to do enforcement, you don't know what you might encounter, do you?
Well, I send scientists out in the field to look at water quality and water supply impact, but they go with an escort. The sites are secured before they go on the sites. We spend a lot of time developing a protocol for civilians to be safe at these sites. And there's, again, as described earlier, there's a real big difference with many of the cultivators are saying, hey, come on my property, tell me what I need to do to come into compliance. Others, are armed and dangerous. So there you get the whole spectrum.
Well, now the compliant people, there has to be some pressure inside the cannabis community to self-regulate and, propel the image of good stewardship.
There is, and it's much easier if we have a permit scheme in place and a path to compliance for those people to come forward, because they can come forward without the kind of fear that I think has persisted under the, Wild West systems that we had in place before. So previously, I think the law enforcement model was too focused on picking the low-hanging fruit and not really going after the big guys. And now the community is seeing that the law enforcement guys are putting their efforts after the big polluters and the big commercial operations, and that the true medicinal growers are not going to be a focus of law enforcement. Or if they are, it's only on occasion.
Do you think this might be partly an educational plan where a lot of polluters specifically might be polluting unknowingly, that they don't know that what they're doing is actually polluting the water supply? Could this be partly educational? Because I imagine these can't be all intentional pollution.
No, they aren't. And in fact, we have a huge education and outreach component talking about setbacks, proper grading, proper fuel storage, mixing what kind of safe pest practices or non-chemical pest control can be used to prevent rodents from attacking your site, and other insects and mites, for example, are a big problem. So our pilot project involves enforcement, yes, and a regulatory program also, but a lot of outreach and education about how to do this responsibly. And we have those resources at our disposal that we've developed in other programs like irrigated agriculture and dairy and construction and timber harvest. It's just a mix of the tools that we would use in any other regulatory program that we now apply to this program. So getting the word out is critical.
Well, part of this, again, when I'm leading back to the education angle, it seems to me that, like you just described, you've already got these programs in place. If you're doing almonds or if you're doing cashews or grapes or corn or any type of other agriculture that's part of the regular food chain for animals or for people, there's already skilled, learned farmers that are familiar with regulations, are adherent to them, and pay the appropriate fines and fees and permits to accomplish that goal.
Yes, that's right. So it's just been the unusual status of legal for medicinal purposes in California, yet illegal and subject to criminal prosecution under federal law, that has sort of driven this activity underground, and so it's daylighting the activity and not demonizing it. I think has been very helpful from the regulator's perspective.
How successful have you been with this program since it's been undertaken? And I guess the second question to follow up to that would be the regulatory scheme. Is it in place already? Have you adopted regulation that is working for you?
So we got funding to implement this proposal last year. The governor's office, the governor put it in his budget after we suggested it, and we do this project jointly with Department of Fish and Wildlife. And so we're 1 year underway, and we're about to get our first permit adopted here on August 12th. I mean, if everything goes well at the public meeting, which I'm not sure how you're familiar are with public meetings in California, but in any event, we'd expect it to go well. We expect the permit to be adopted. We've done a lot of education and outreach. We've done 100 inspections. Many of them have resulted in enforcement actions, but many of them are just going to be like fix-it tickets, punch lists. So it's been, I think, a very successful program in year one, and our funding has been reauthorized for 2 more years.
Are you seeing an impact yet, and do you anticipate a larger impact given the program's kind of just getting underway?
We're just starting to see the impacts of our initial efforts. I mean, the impact we're seeing so far is the development of meaningful dialogue and the exchange of information between the growers and the regulators. But to see impacts to streams, we're going to have to be able to persuade cultivators to install storage instead of diverting straight from streams, build a pond, put in a tank, and then to forbear or not divert water from streams during the low-flow summer and fall months and instead use that storage. And I think that's one of the solutions we want to see developed. But it's taken this much time to get to the point where we're starting to see that be realized.
So much in the way that some people might wish that they could borrow from the winter and add it to the summer and borrow from the summer and add it to the winter so that you could even things out a bit. This is what you're really doing with the water supply as it comes naturally in the state, yes? With this water storage.
That's for better or for worse. I mean, that's the story of our state and the water supply that we have. I mean, Los Angeles it's all location and timing specific.
Now, I guess where this leads to in the end is this is a growing industry, and I'm not saying that facetiously. I mean, it is getting bigger as we speak, and there's some anticipated language that might put a ballot petition on the fall in 2016 for legalized cannabis again. They're going for that again. Do you anticipate that this, if something like that passes, might be an even more important program, or that there would be further impact that you might have to address?
Well, if that happens, it'll be good that we've prepared for it by working in the context that we're working now, because my sense is that will really increase the demand for cannabis and consequently the number of gardens that we see. I mean, we estimate now there's between 20 and 40,000 gardens of more than 6 plants just in Northern California.
Good Lord.
And so, and that's the Emerald Growers Coalition, which is a trade group out of the Emerald Triangle, estimates that 10% of the cannabis cultivated in California is sold here. But if it goes to recreational, my sense is that amount will increase, and we'll see a big boom in the activity, and it could only help to have had the regulatory program and some practice with implementing it already in place.
Cris, we've only got a couple seconds left in this segment. I do have a bunch of other questions I'd like to ask you. Can you sit with us to the break, or are you really limited on time?
No, I can wait.
Okay, so very good. Look, I think this is a really important topic from the standpoint of the nation because, just like politics go in Ohio, so goes the nation with the economy in California. I mean, right down to the marijuana growing itself, right? So let me come back on the other side of the break and address that end of things. You're listening to The Full Melt Show. Our guest this hour is Cris Carrigan from the California State Water Enforcement Board. We'll be back with more coming up after the break. Stand by.
You're getting the full melt.
My Compassion's Cannabis Conference and Exposition will be held July 23rd to 25th. The nation's premier cannabis health and wellness event will feature stimulating and comprehensive presentations that are up to the minute on cannabis science, human health, legislation, and business growth, all designed to attract the largest gathering of patients, healthcare professionals, lawyers, and service providers found anywhere. Specialists from around the country will give live presentations on cannabis. For tickets and information, visit mycompassioncanacon.com.
If you're like us, your pets aren't just animals. They're members of your family. Pet Pain CBD hemp oil drops are great for aging as well as active dogs and cats. Some people are apprehensive about hemp treatments for pets. They ask us, what are you smoking? Absolutely nothing, and neither will your pet. Like other hemp-based products for humans, the allure is all of the benefits of cannabis without any of the high. The CBD oil has shown to rejuvenate the bones, joints, brain, stomach, eyes, and heart. And the drops contain absolutely no corn, wheat, soy, artificial colors and flavors, or preservatives. Pick some up today. Visit petpain.com or ask for Pet Pain at your local pet store. Petpain.com. CBD relief for your pet.
It's not easy out there. but it can be easier. And when it comes to medical marijuana in Michigan and chronic pain management, Dr. Bob Townsend, renowned for his patient advocacy and deep understanding of how patients and medical marijuana certifications fit together, makes it his hallmark to educate and provide the best holistic treatment for your condition. His knowledgeable staff makes you feel warm and welcome, and Dr. Bob makes you feel well. With locations across the state in Cadillac and Gaylord, Kalamazoo, Marquette, Mount Pleasant, Muskegon, Saginaw, Traverse City, you can't beat the convenience and feeling you get knowing you have someone on your side that cares. Denali Healthcare is on the web at denalihealthcaremi.com. Get answers to your holistic health questions or schedule an appointment now by calling 989-339-4464. Chronic pain management and holistic health answers is what they do. It's all they do. DenaliHealthcareMI.com. Get your certification and peace of mind now by making an appointment with Dr. Bob Townsend at 989-339-4464.
Get the beach bong ready for sunshine and sandy beaches in McGrill, Jamaica this November as the High Times Cannabis Cup moves from Amsterdam to the Caribbean. Your trip starts with the absolute best rates on airfare, hotel, events, and all your Cannabis Cup travel needs at TravelCannabisCup.com. Come stay with us, relax in the sun, play in the sand, and smoke down with the cool people, man. Get to the High Times Jamaica Cannabis Cup. Best travel prices right now at TravelCannabisCup.com.
Get growing with GrowMax. Indoor, outdoor, beginner, or a warehouse full of gavitas, probiotic organics, or huge production with max power monster aeroponics systems. We can help you rock it. YouTube GrowMax with 2 X's. Customer service is why we're blowing up. And I'm Dave. My cell number is 906-221-2111. We also specialize in electrical and HVAC and new double-ended bulb technology. 906-221-2111. Get growing. GrowMax.
It's the Full Melt radio show. So we're talking about cannabis growing in California and how the drought is affected by it. And not just the drought itself, but also water supply in general. People are not growing it right, at least from the standpoint of their waste products, ending up in the streams, back in the river, back in the water supply. This is all bad. Welcoming back to the Cadillac No Smell Bags lines, Cris Carrigan from the California State Water Board. Cris, thanks for coming on the program today. Are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, sorry. I think I did the button thing again. There's a couple I got 2 different phone banks, and I keep putting you up on the wrong one. So listen, if in the broader scheme of things, do you have everything you want from the water enforcement place? Are you in the best place you could be? Or is there some other stuff that you'd like to see put into place?
Well, right now our project is a pilot program, and so it was given funding just to test it, and we can't cover the whole state or even the area in the North State with the resources that we have, and so we have to sort of demonstrate that we're going to be successful with this to the legislature and the governor's office to be able to move forward. So, yeah, we need more resources, more of the same kind of resources to really get our grips around the scope of this problem.
Largest opponent, largest proponent in the state?
Well, I'm not sure we have many opponents. Potentially the extreme property rights groups, but I think most people believe that it's time for this type of approach. Proponents, our biggest proponents are, I think, the legislators whose jurisdictions include these main cannabis cultivating areas, and then the cannabis cultivation community itself. I think they're hungry for regulation and legitimization, and to the extent we provide that just in the narrow area of water quality and water supply impacts, they're some of our biggest proponents.
You've mentioned that there's been a rock and a hard place position here with regards to creating regulation because it's been a hot-button topic, slow to come along. So I think you're right that there are some people hungry in the cannabis community for regulation and legitimization. This has played into their favor, hasn't it?
Yes, it has, yeah.
And so I guess that's a great recipe going into the coming year, which I anticipate there may be as many as 7 new recreational states. I mean, there are 12 that have, some kind of language on the ballot.
Yeah, my sense is that we're going to see this issue put to the voters in many states, and we've seen it pass, more frequently now in the near term. It hasn't been on the ballot in our state for some time, and there are a number of bills already out there in the legislature this year that would address sort of a comprehensive scheme that also addresses clinics, taxation, land use, and other issues that the water boards aren't really primary on.
It seems to me there's got to be some people in the cannabis community who are using water, and there's somebody that's not watering their lawn, and they know they've got a neighbor or a couple neighbors with cannabis growing there, and they're using the water for, growing the cannabis. This has got to be making those people mad where they weren't previously. Have you seen that going on?
Not so much. I think we see that tension with ranchers or other large-scale users, but in the urban environment, we don't see that same kind of tension.
Do you think that there's going to be some broadening of this program? Do you think you're going to be able to convince the legislature and the governor to kind of rubber stamp this pilot into a broader thing?
Yeah, I do. I think it's going to happen.
I think that's great. It's an awesome thing. I think anytime you're talking about, especially using public resources, and I think water is a public resource at some level, to grow products for sale on the commercial open market. And let's face it, California's in that industry in a large way, yes?
Yes, and what you're right, Steve. Water in California is owned by the people of the state, and it's held in trust by those people. And a water right, although it's a property interest, it's a limited or conditional right to use that water in a beneficial and reasonable manner. So you don't, as a private property owner, you don't own the water. And so when you're using that water, you have to do it reasonably, and your use has to be beneficial. So the idea that we're regulating it, the time has come for us to do that.
Do you think there's going to be some evening out amongst these counties where they're super sensitive and then not so sensitive and some don't care at all? Do you think the state regulation will even that playing field a little bit so that you don't have this popcorn culture going on?
I hope so. Sheriff Allman from Mendocino County drew this map at a recent meeting that I was at, and he said, if your grandma's taking her medicine from Arcata to Los Angeles, here's all the things that could or couldn't happen to her. And it was an amazing little story of how, your grandma could be in jail in Butte County or Tehama County, but let go on her way, got a ticket, all the various things that could happen to her. And I think the law enforcement community here would like to see standardization so that because people move around and it's very difficult for them to meaningfully enforce the law, which they're charged to do, when it's so inconsistent.
So consistency is important. It looks like it's on the horizon. Things are on the uplook in California from the standpoint of water. Yes, it can't go too much lower, can it, Chris?
I'll tell you they can't. We're so dry out here. I was at Lake Tahoe this last weekend. I've never seen the lake so low in 30 years.
I saw this thing posted, and I didn't vet this out, but I just pass it by you for just interest in talk. These in Costa Rica, I believe it was Costa Rica. I'm just as memory serves. A big sign where they have water problem in Costa Rica with supplying people in rural communities with water. There's a great big billboard. And somehow in Costa Rica, they're sucking water out of the air with this billboard and making it available at the base of the billboard as fresh water for people all around. Could California do some things like that? That sounds pretty innovative.
It's fascinating. We had a trade group here from Australia, and they had a lot of suggestions about dealing with drought. They'd gone through, I think, a 10-year prolonged drought, and they did a lot of different things there, improved desalination technology, have a water market, all kinds of different things. And, they were here to talk to legislators and civic leaders here about how Australia helped resolve the drought that they had. And so we have to think about it on many levels because we're not going to find a silver bullet or an easy answer. We have to try to develop a lot of different approaches that can help contribute to solving the problem.
The public sector seems to be using a great deal of these water resources. Have you had any philanthropy come in and say, I want to help contribute to this cause with water conservation and enforcement of appropriate water laws and lobbying for better stuff, this kind of thing? Have you had any philanthropists step forward and say, I need to give back?
Sure, and not just philanthropists, individuals, but what we call NGOs or non-governmental organizations like the Nature Conservancy and Trout Unlimited, Cal Trout, Sierra Club. They're all very actively involved in these issues on the political level, but also doing things on their own, studying appropriate flow levels to preserve salmon spawning areas, and things of that nature. So they're big players in helping solve this problem.
I'm so glad to see that those guys are able to form a coalition to find an answer to this problem, because it's such an important one there, and it's, I guess, really glazed over by people in places where I live. I'm in Michigan, where we've got the Great Lakes surrounding us, and I talked to our audience in prefacing this interview with that discussion about how, we kind of take water for granted here. I think we do generally in the entire country. California's got some strict regulations with regards to just toilet flushing, yes?
Well, we have conservation regulations in place. Urban water users are supposed to be conserving up to 25% of their previous use levels under the governor's drought emergency order. But yeah, I mean, I remember the utility paying to install, giving me rebates to install low-flow toilets in my old 1940s home, 10 years ago. So there's a lot of incentive to conserve our supply and to use it thoughtfully.
Well, Cris, I hope that people across the nation pay attention to what California is doing, because you're pioneering this issue, especially with regards to the cannabis community, and re-educating those new farmers, because let's face it, that's what they are. They're both new and at farming, and they're farmers. Yep. So I think it's important that they pay attention to what you're doing out there, because it's going to spread across to other places. This is going to become an important issue, even in places where water is more abundant. It still needs to be conserved. It still needs to be used appropriately, and it still needs to be not polluted. So I thank you for what you're doing out there, and I thank you for joining us on the program today.
Thank you, Steve.
In the future, I guess if people want to learn about water conservancy in California, is there a website you can send them to?
Sure, they can go to the State Water Resources Control Board's website and find out about conservation measures. It's www.waterboards, that's one word, S on the end, .ca.gov.
How do you want me to label you on the program when I go to put the show notes on there? How can I put your title on there just so I don't mess it up?
I'm the Chief of Enforcement at the State Water Resources Control Board.
Thank you so much, Cris. Cheers and sparkling water to you, my friend.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll talk to you sometime soon.
Okay, bye now.
All right, bye-bye. So I think it's like I said, it's a really important issue, and it's one that people should be paying attention to. Please be responsible with your gardening. It's important from if you've got a medical grow, it's really important to grow medical marijuana properly for your cannabis patient, right? You're not going to be able to continue that if you're going to be met with resistance in the way that you are using your water or disposing of the waste from your garden. So we'll come back on the other side. There's a little bit of clip news, some other show notes, and promotional activity that we'd like to bring your way. We'll talk about that briefly as we wrap up this edition of The Full Melt Show. Hey, don't you go away anywhere.
You're getting The Full Melt.
Got something to hide? Canalock offers discreet and effective storage solutions that destroy odor, so nobody knows. Canalock is a patented charcoal-activated bag that discreetly stores your marijuana. Canalock is made from the same material as military chemical warfare suits. Get yours at canalock.com. Visit canalock.com to learn more about no-smell technology.
Imagine a world where patients can use marijuana like any other medicine. The Marijuana Patients Organization challenges the status quo by helping our neighbors to enjoy a better quality of life. Visit the MPO at marijuanapatients.org and enjoy informative articles, engaging debates, and information about treatments, doctors, and dispensaries in your area. Over 50,000 people have registered at marijuanapatients.org since 2010. Join us at the Marijuana Patients Organization today, marijuanapatients.org.
Hey, it's Steve Green for the Sweet Leaf in Flint, because now getting safe access to medical cannabis patients in Flint, Michigan is never more welcoming. Presenting the Sweet Leaf, a brand new patient experience bringing 12 carefully selected caregivers housed in 9 separate offices to distinctly assist you with their knowledge and reputation for excellent patient care. Classes and training coming soon in the large community room. Check it out in person, 400 South Door Highway, or call 810-259-2571. The Sweet Leaf Center in Flint, 810-259-2571.
If you're like us, your pets aren't just animals. They're members of your family. Pet Pain CBD hemp oil drops are great for aging as well as active dogs and cats. Some people are apprehensive about hemp treatments for pets. They ask us, what are you smoking? Absolutely nothing, and neither will your pet. Like other hemp-based products for humans, the allure is all of the benefits of cannabis without any of the high. The CBD oil has shown to rejuvenate the bones, joints, brain, stomach, eyes, and heart. And the drops contain absolutely no corn, wheat, soy, artificial colors and flavors, or preservatives. Pick some up today. Visit petpain.com or ask for Pet Pain at your local pet store. petpain.com. CBD relief for your pets.
My Compassion's Cannabis Conference and Exposition will be held July 23rd to 25th. The nation's premier cannabis health and wellness event will feature stimulating and comprehensive presentations that are up to the minute on cannabis science, human health, legislation, and business growth, all designed to attract the largest gathering of patients, healthcare professionals, lawyers, and service providers found anywhere. Specialists from around the country will give live presentations on cannabis. For tickets and information, visit mycompassioncanacon.com.
It's the Full Melt Radio Show. Damn tootin' it is. And we're moving along and marching forward in the cannabis community with great confidence in the coming months, let me tell you. A lot of great events happening this summer. I just mentioned to you earlier in the program, again, reminding you, broadcasting tomorrow live from the CannaCon conference down in, over in from here, at the Navy Pier in Chicago. Tomorrow night and Friday night. Join us live from Chicago. Should be a great time. I'm looking forward to talking to. They got some promotional speakers out there, top of the line people, from what I understand. It's a big issue in Illinois. This issue about medical marijuana, because they've got 26,000 people that have applied, only 2,600 that are actual medical marijuana patients, or maybe is it 2,600? I believe it's 2,600 that have been approved. I was under the understanding, and I heard it referred to differently on that My Fox thing. There's I should have played that. I should have grabbed that clip. There's a great clip. Have to play it maybe. Maybe I'll play it going into tomorrow's program from Chicago. It was a piece from one of the television stations with Mish, who's from My Compassion, which is putting on the event, and is having us out there. Talking about the event and talking about how important the educational aspect of this is in Chicago for that purpose. Because there are so many people that are like, what? They're very confused out there. I mean, anytime you start a program like this, a medical marijuana program, as different as the Chicago or Illinois model is from many of the models of the rest of the country, you got to start from the ground up. You're reinventing the wheel, aren't you? You're not adopting so much of another program, but creating your own. And this takes some time. It's a lengthy process. And in that process is change. Some things take longer than anticipated. Some things you couldn't anticipate at all. And when they pop up, they drag the system out. And then this confuses the public because, wait a minute, I thought we were supposed to be able to do this by then. Are we getting cards? Are we not getting paid? That's what the TV report referred to, medical marijuana cards. I was under the understanding in Illinois that you don't get a card, you get a letter. Which is, again, very different, isn't it? So we're going to clear up much of this smoke in the air. We're going to try and address the heart of the matter as it relates to the people in Illinois and really dive into this subject. I think the biggest issue, as I understand it, in Illinois right now, is the idea that doctors aren't feeling comfortable about making medical marijuana recommendations, either because of their employers or other issues, Maybe they're concerned about the law. Maybe they're concerned that there's no protection. Maybe they're worried about their DEA license. I mean, there can be a number of reasons, legitimate ones, that doctors would have in being apprehensive about signing a medical marijuana recommendation because it is not a prescription. They can't do that. It's against federal law. It's against their DEA license. They cannot prescribe marijuana as it's normally termed. They can't take out the pad and write a prescription. They can't do it. The only thing they can do is make a recommendation after conferring with their patient that their condition is one that will be alleviated, have a palliative effect by the use of medical marijuana. Or really, it should just be by the use of cannabis, isn't it? Because that's what it is. It's cannabis that we're using here. They call it medical marijuana, but it's really cannabis. So it's that murky water we'll wade into and try and clarify. There are a lot of people that will help us to do that. But I think the biggest problem, as I understand it, and we'll be corrected, I'll be self-corrected by this when we get out there and explore this in greater detail. A lot of vendors out there of information. Many times when you go to places like the Cannabis Cup, which we'll be going to in Clio, Michigan in August and broadcasting live from there, and then again, hopefully in Negril, Jamaica, for the World Cannabis Cup in November. Right now, I know we're going to be at the Cannabis Cup in Clio, still waiting on details on the one happening in November. It's only a few short months away. And if you want to go out there, I'd start making plans now, even though they're not selling tickets on the site yet. So we're going to Chicago to talk about the Illinois thing. Then we're going to be in Clio talking about cannabis in general, medical marijuana. And, boy, that's a lot of fun. But the difference between those two events is vast. You'll see a lot of information and informational booths in Chicago. There'll be some other booths, but you're not going to be able to find the booths that you will find at the Cannabis Cup in Clio or at Puffapalooza out on August 8th in Jackson. You're not going to find those same kind of booths as you would find at the thing in Chicago. The thing in Chicago really isn't about supplies and materials and different it's really about educating about people. How do I get into the system? Where's my safe access at? How do I get that? And what's the path of least resistance to that goal? That's what's happening in Chicago. Later, once they've got this broadened out, because I don't even think, in fact, I know, there's no medical marijuana available at any dispensary anywhere in Illinois right now, including Chicago. And on a broader note, there's not going to be any until sometime late this fall, so I hear. They just started putting seeds in the ground. They're just barely, sproutlings, so to speak. So that's what's going on there. Then the broader term, recreational and medical marijuana. Look, in Michigan, we're looking to legalize? Going to get that stuff legalized in 2016. When I leave this booth, I will be going out and collecting signatures in the park as we speak. There's a park right across the way, the expressway from here. And I'm going to go over there and collect some signatures to get people to be able to vote on this issue on the ballot, legalizing in 2016 in Michigan. I anticipate that will happen, that we'll get those signatures collected and that we'll be able to pass this into law. The polling is overwhelming on this, not only in this state, but in other states as well. So, it won't be just a medical message being spread at the Clio Cannabis Cup because it's the one that will immediately precede. Well, not quite immediately, is it? There's going to be another one next year, right before the election. But then we'll know, because we'll know by December of this year in this state whether or not we've gotten that done. Right around just before Christmas, we'll have to turn in those, because we started them in June. You got 6 months to do that collection. And so I anticipate that we'll know at that time, and probably before then. I'm hoping we'll have enough signatures collected we can turn them in way before then. I also anticipate if they do, they'll probably keep collecting them and just keep adding to the stack, given what just happened in Ohio with Responsible Ohio turning in twice as many, about twice as many as they needed for valid signatures. They got discounted by over half. In other words, half of them weren't valid they weren't considered valid signatures for one reason or another. Illegible, not a right voter, or the signature doesn't match. They're on a different page from a different count. A lot of reasons they can discount these voters. They found a 50% discount rate. In other words, only half of them count. Less than that, in fact. They still have to raise about 29,000, almost 30,000 more signatures in another 8 days or so. I mean, the ticker's on the countdown for them. If they don't rectify that within that 8 days, this will go down. They won't be on the ballot at all. And their competing ballot that says they're going to, keep people from being able to change the Constitution in Ohio this way to create these kind of monopoly oligarchies, whatever, oligopolies, out of any industry. And then I don't think you'll see Responsible Ohio come back again for another swing at that bat. It's too expensive, and they'd have to do it twice now. They just doubled the cost of doing this that way and betting on it, hoping that people will actually vote for it. That's a big bet. Doubling the cost of the petition drive by having to do through two cycles. That's just crazy. So all of this will be talked about both this year and next year at the Clio Cannabis Cup. And I think in the year between now and then, much will be made food for fodder. That's all that we got today. I guess if you get a chance to put some cash aside for Nick Grill Jamaica, I would suggest that you do that. Look, I had a chance to go to that first, Cannabis Cup, the first legal Cannabis Cup in the United States. It was in Denver in 2013. First one. You still couldn't go into a shop and buy it, but cannabis as a subject had already been addressed on a statewide level. It was the first one. There will never be another first Jamaica Cannabis Cup. Get your stuff together and meet us out there as we hopefully broadcast live from the island in the Caribbean. Come back to Jamaica.
The Full Melt Show is a production of TFM Media.